Hello, welcome to another tonalist landscape oil painting demonstration. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy, and welcome as well to the Mastering Georgia Ness series, Day 6. The painting I am doing today is a study based after Georgia Ness called The Gloaming. The size I did it was an 8x14, and I wasn't able to find out a lot of other information about this painting. If however you do have information about it, you can always email me, and I'll make sure it goes on the corresponding blog post for this image. Now, on that corresponding blog post, you'll find a reference image that I used, or the reference image that I used to create my study, and it's there. It's there if you want to make your own study. This size, 8x14, this proportion I should say, and this size, I've never worked at before. But while doing research for my project, I came across maybe about 8 to 10 images that Inness did that were of a more panoramic orientation than his usual golden mean, which is slightly panoramic, but these proportions are really neat. And the other sort of panoramic proportion that I've used a lot in the past is the two squares abutted to each other, which gives you a very nice panorama. But I really like this proportion as well, and looking forward to doing a few of my own paintings in this format. Now, I want to mention that the live video for this is in the members area, and you can get there through a link underneath the video. In the members area, I go through the reference image, a bit, talking about things that I'm going to be looking out for, maybe changing or paying attention to. And also there's a color mixing section where I break down in this case, Georgia Ness's image into maybe the 8 or 9 constituent colors. There wasn't a lot of variation in his colors here. It's occupying a pretty narrow part of the color wheel, like no blues. Actually, no purples either, really. There are greens, and they're in that tree mass. So, a lot of buildings and things here. Now, one of the things that sort of distinguishes, oh, by the way, we're at about the 6-minute mark. We're going to read from the Georgia Ness chapter in A History of American Tonalism. So stay tuned for that. I won't just be me burbling. What I want to say, well, now I've done the drawing portion of the study, the underpainting, with my own sort of hybrid umber tone. In this case, it was a mixture of brown ochre and black. So in the past I've done, and it's a brown ochre from Winsor Newton, which is a little lighter than the Old Holland brown ochre that I was using. With the Old Holland brown ochre, I was mixing in raw umber as well. What I'm shooting for is a raw umber color that has a bit more opacity to it. It's a bit of a drag having nothing but transparency with the raw umber sometimes, especially when I'm trying to do the drawing / underpainting. So I've been playing with that, and I've come up with a real elegant solution, which of course, I give you blow-by-blows in the members area. Yeah. His painting is, one of these orangey sorts of things, and it was quite fun to do. Also, you could tell when, especially, pardon me, especially when you're doing a study after, it's quite rough. I suspect it wasn't actually finished. Don't know, but I actually went through 2 color passes on this, and it sort of makes the last, say, 1/3 of the video not as awesome as I might like, in that what you're seeing is like my brush strokes sitting on top of the liquid first color pass, and they look extremely matte, whereas I know that's not going to be the case, mostly because I'm working at a slight angle, and you'll see in the very last bit of the video where I turn the painting at that angle. You get a better sense of how I'm doing things. Now, the preview image, you would have seen me adjust that, so that's based on my perception of what this painting that I did ended up looking like. But I don't know what I'm going to do about that going forward. Really, I just need to maybe start off earlier in the morning and end later in the afternoon, because this one I just ran out of steam, and it was getting late. And so the thing is, though, and I might mention this, if you need to do this like second color pass kind of thing, actually you can see it about where I am right now. I decided that in the painting, and I was saying, okay, what I'm going to do is work very thin. Also, I thought, because his painting was so rough, it seemed to me that full-on, straight-up opaque painting across the surface wasn't really getting me where I wanted to go. So, and I started realizing that, of course, as I was plugging myself into the process of doing a study and trying to get a good, fairly accurate representation of what he'd done. I'm not tracing it. I do have my M. Francis grid, my patented divide the picture into 4 quadrants grid that I use, and that will help me get my bearings. But one thing I noticed right after I started putting color in is that I had the building way too short, and sometimes once you start really, so things are a bit indefinite sometimes until they start popping into color. So no, once I figured out, okay, the way I'm going to get this accomplished is by going very thin, then I thought, well, if I'm going thin and I'm using predominantly earth pigments, it should be dry in a day or two, and it was. And so I was able to put a quick coat of liquid over the top and then do a glaze with some Indian yellow, which is kind of subtle, but I do think you see the effect on the video, and it was certainly a neat effect in real life because it had a unifying automatic tonalism thing. Now, I'd already had a strong tonal basis for what I did with the regular painting, but the glaze really cements that, no question about it, and it's hard to pass up if you know you're going to do a second pass. Don't know how much of this I'll be doing in this series, because hopefully you're bearing with me and you get the idea. So a lot of what I was doing in the end portion is just plugging in little bits of texture. Really, that's all I was doing. Anyway, let's get into our book here. We were on page 41, and we were right at the end of page 41. And Inness told his son he saw himself working in the same line as a composer and poet. Quote from Inness: "Now we'll put a dab of dark here and light over there, just like music. George, the harmony of tone," because George Inness's son's name was George Jr. "We thump, thump, thump the keys to the distant, but don't forget to put in the harsh note, the accidental. It makes the contrast that gives interest and beauty to the whole. The gradation of light and shade which corresponds to music. What is art anyway? Nothing but temperament, expression of your feelings." Completely agree with that. That's the business I'm in. Expressing my feelings in paint and trying to create something, that resonates and is beautiful. Yeah. Okay, page 42. The young George Inness spent his formative years in the then small town of Newark, New Jersey, near the still unspoiled Passaic River and Hackensack Meadows. This marshy landscape, blossoming with flowers in the spring, with magnificent oaks and beeches, elms, and maples on its outskirts, most likely impressed itself on the young artist. According to turn-of-the-century art historian Frank Jewett Mather, who knew Inness's New Jersey countryside well, it was then a farming country, broken into glades and hillocks, offering juxtaposition of leftover forest trees with orchards or pasture, an agreeable, intimate, half-tamed landscape, with plentiful reminders of its primitive solemnity. The love of this sort of landscape beauty is the single permanent characteristic of our most versatile and volatile painter. As a young man, Inness enjoyed fairly prosperous mercantile surroundings. His father and his brothers were successful small-time businessmen. Inness, however, was drawn obsessively by all accounts to artistic pursuits from an early age. And Let's see, where were we? I had to sneeze, sorry. From an early age, and retained throughout his life a suspicion, if not dislike, for business and crass money-making. The business side of art was for him an infernal agony. Attracted to prints of old master paintings in his student years, his first successful forays into landscape betray his fascinations with old masters, especially Claudian schemes of composition and the rhythmic natural forms of the 17th century Dutch landscapists. Already in his first exhibited landscapes at the National Academy of Design, Inness displayed an attitude contrary to the prevailing styles of Cole and Durand. His landscapes were pastoral rather than wilderness, his compositions generalized and lacking the distracting detail of the typical Hudson River School product, and filled with motifs and tonality derived from old masters. For this he was roundly criticized, along with his proclivity to reduce and modify the natural colors of landscape to a tone of color. And we'll keep going. We got time. Let's keep going. Let's get to the bottom of this very, very long paragraph. In a day when truth to nature was the ideal of Durand and Kinset, what were referred to as Inness's artificial studio concoctions, art derived from art and not nature, according to the critics, went against the grain. The tonalist in Inness was deep-rooted. As a New York critic in 1853 noted, in other pictures from Mr. Inness's hand, he seems to have sacrificed effect to his great love of mere tone. In this respect, he will find that time, a greater toner than he, will entirely obliterate them. They are too much like the old masters for a young master. Kept up a little higher, they would go down much better. And he means, and we'll leave it there because we're running out of time. He means higher in tone, lighter in tone. Trust me, I know. If I was painting lighter in tone, I would probably have a lot more success in the market that I live in here in New Zealand, where the sorts of things that are very popular are almost primary in color and graphic as well. Yeah, but that's okay, because well, we got a minute. Let's talk for a minute. What's the difference between being a commercial artist and a fine artist? Well, it's not just artifice, it's an attitude, and it's an attitude of really, I think, concern with legacy, right? What is this picture? This picture will survive me, God willing. At least some of them will, even if there's a fire. There's the ones that have been sold and the ones that are in other places. Quite a few here, though, so let's pray there is no fire. But ultimately, they'll go on and have a life of their own after I'm no longer here. And that was really one of the main concerns that drew me into out of commercial art, where I might do things that were really awesome looking, but they were put on T-shirts or mugs. They weren't designed to be anything permanent. A lot of them were drawn outside the computer but colored in the computer, and designed for commercial purposes and for commercial aims. So that's not what I'm doing now, and that's not what Inness was into. And it doesn't mean that you have to be all precious about things either. It just means that what you're doing is designed to be art, an artistic endeavor. And I hate to say it, it's such a cliche, but art's for its own sake. Yeah. Now, a couple of these videos at the end, I slow it way down for you. And here you can see I did turn the board a bit, and it's not looking too bad in my preview. I'm actually really happy with this painting, and it's going to be for sale in my store. It's a little bigger, a little more work, so I'm going for $3.50 on this one. So and now the link underneath the video has been image specific, but it'll be just for the store, and you'll find it at the top, or drill on down, or if you're in the future and it's not there, then it's gone. Yeah, but real happy with this, and really happy to present it to you. And we'll keep getting better. We'll keep getting more Inness, and the struggle's real. And gosh, he was a master of it. He knew what the struggle was. And you know, frankly, if you're just working for commercial aims, you don't struggle nearly as much because, in my case, I know what would sell really well in the market where I live. You know, and in general too. And you know, at the end of the day, you want to do what you want to do that moves you. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for getting to this far in the video. If you did, please leave me a comment if you're the type of person that's inclined to do so. I appreciate every comment, and appreciate all of you supporting the channel just by maybe watching the videos or leaving comments, or some of you left donations. I think there's a new feature where you can, if you appreciate me, you can just send me a quick donation via YouTube. So that sounds good. And they say a lot of that money will come to me, so try it out. Anyway, until I come back with another video, do me a favor, do me a solid. Please take good care of yourself, your family, all your loved ones, and stay out of trouble. And God bless you and your family.